In my opinion, the first thing would be to ask yourself, do I want an LMS or do I absolutely need an LMS? And let's understand that wanting to have an LMS is one thing, but to have an actual need for an LMS, that's an altogether different story. If I can paraphrase, a want is a desire to have something that is really not a necessity. You want to have it, but you can do without it. But a need is a product or a service that you most definitely do require in order to survive. So armed with this knowledge now, let's go back and consider if you want an LMS or do you absolutely need an LMS. And let's hold that thought for a moment and let's try to identify some core needs that only an LMS can satisfy. So one of the core needs that a lot of training providers have is the ability to offer always on type of training. So training that is generally always available as compared to classroom training, because classroom training is always scheduled. So there is a set date, there's a starting time, there's an ending time, there's training in the middle of it. Sometimes you even need to have a certain number of participants in order for training to actually take place, because without 5 or 7 or 10 participants, it's just not feasible. So that could be a nightmare for training coordinators. On the other hand, training via LMS, that means to be able to jump over these obstacles, because an LMS will empower you. It'll give you the ability, if you want, you could have a structured classroom kind of a training, but you can also offer always on training, generally training that is generally always available. You can train groups, you can train individuals, so there is no hold up with the numbers game either. Another very common core need is for training providers to be able to widen the net, so to have a larger client base, more fish. An LMS means greater outreach, because with an LMS and the ability to offer your training online, that means it's possible for you to offer your training beyond borders. So it can be accessed by anyone in the world, anyone with an internet connection. The third very crucial need for a lot of training providers is the need to cut their training costs down. And on paper, less of classroom training and more students, that sounds like a fantastic business proposition. Definitely the business I'd like to be in. But in reality, without proper research and lacking education about what an LMS is, how they work, you may end up with an LMS that actually does not meet your need at all. And having an LMS then that is incompatible with your training means that you might actually end up seeing your training costs shoot up rather than come down, and maybe user complaints go into orbit. But your best bet then might just be an LMS that is custom made for your training, that complements your training content. It works with your processes, and that is in fact what will help you bring down your training costs. So I think the first thing to do really should be to ask yourself this question. So for each of these points we have just spoken about, and there may be more, but ask yourself, what is my core need? Is it my core need to be able to offer always on training? Or is it my number one priority right now is to widen the net? Or is it to bring down costs? Does having an LMS actually meet that need? Does it or does it not? And that really should be the first thing that you should do.